2 Ding Ding of the day, and we have a fabulous industry panel. And then I'm going to be pontificating. We're going to lose the refreshments break, if that's okay with everybody, because we actually have quite a quick fire set, not quick fire here, but we've a sort of a compact session in the afternoon, so we'll let you go that little bit earlier. If anybody does need to use the facilities, please feel free. We wouldn't like to cause any accidents. I'm sure you all know my panel here today. We've got Bridgine and Niall from Coalesce Wearable Art. We've got Adele McBride, who you've already heard from, and Rosie Temple from McGee. Absolutely delighted. Give them a round of applause, please. So it's one thing inviting people who are industry experts and who are used to speaking. It's another thing when you're not paid speakers, right, to stand up and expose yourself. So I suppose, Niall and Bridgine, you might tell us a little bit about the background to Coalesce and how it came to be and where you're at the moment.
Okay, well, by trade I would be a tattoo artist. Whenever lockdown hit, obviously because I was a close contact service, I had to close down. So as a means to try and get back some of the income that I had lost, what I had done is I started making some illustrations, some Japanese art, just to sell as art prints. And Bridgine, working in close contact services as well, she was working doing wedding alterations. And she had pointed out how some of my illustrations would have looked good on silk kimonos. Sorry, I need to breathe. I'm just I don't know. But so we decided to use the time that we had off work to order some silk panels and just create some mock-ups. And we just started in that sort of sense.
And then the streetwear came from that then, very quickly after.
Yeah, so because the silk, obviously, it's an expensive material to work with. So whenever you're starting out as a new brand, nobody knows you. You don't have any wind behind you to push you. You know, because we had to charge a couple $100 for, just one piece, it was hard to kind of get the customers in. So then we kind of looked towards like a more streetwear section as well along with it, so a bit more affordable. So we started doing t-shirts and hoodies and things like that and bringing the tattoo element into that as well.
I have 2 questions for you off the bat.
Yes.
First of all, are you friends or are you partners?
Partners.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's interesting because it's another challenge,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And we'll talk about that a little bit later. And that may or may not be pertinent to anybody else in the room. But what I do want to ask you about is whether you leveraged your existing community and how that worked in terms of introducing a new product into the realm.
Yeah, no, definitely. Well, from being a tattoo artist, I had a bit of a following from that myself. So I would have used that to try and, especially through social media, but there was only so much that we could have reached. But we applied through the Reimagine project, which is, I heard you talking about it there earlier.
Yeah.
You mentioned, it's basically like a shop set up where different crafters would come in and I think you described it like a gallery. So ourselves and then all our brands, we would have went in and used this shop and we would have displayed our stuff it was in Foyleside, which is obviously a prime retail space. So that has probably been the most significant part of our growth.
And so from that then you were able to expose yourself to an entirely new audience.
Yeah.
Exactly. So from here, we're here now. We've only been set up. Do you know what I mean? So it's opened so many avenues, and from that as well, even just meeting other designers and you've been doing collaborations with people. I know it's not fashion related, but there's a lady in there who would make skincare. And I approached her about making like a tattoo aftercare balm, and then she has now stocks my shop. So it kind of opened up a lot of avenues for all of us. We kind of all bounced off each other.
You see, that's what it's all about. It's about how to create additional value and how to round out that customer experience. What can you give them? And say, for example, with myself and Brendan, with Len and Courtney, we make a women's wear range. not every woman is going to be able to afford our clothes, wear our clothes, so we created a podcast. Because if you like what we do and you like us, even if you can't buy the dress, you can listen to us and we can amuse you with our inane ramblings, you know? But it is that, how can you unlock new little bits of experience for the customer? I absolutely love that. And before I move away from you, I'm going to ask you about, first of all, the challenges. What are the big challenges that you're facing as a new brand?
I think the main thing to begin with was we struggled to get seen. Even using social media, I mean, without paying, which we refused to do, we wanted to build our followers organically, and we struggled with that to begin with. But then, thankfully, the Reimagine project, as soon as we applied for that, that's whenever we started to see the followers coming in, and the audience that we had were connected with us, and they were buying from us. Cost of living as well, I think, is one of the biggest things that we have noticed. Not just as a couple, we've 2 young children, even paying for childcare, things like that. Because Niall's obviously working.
Don't get me started.
Yeah,
on
yeah.
But anyway,
that's a personal thing. You know, that's not necessarily to do with.
No, but it's not a personal thing.
Yeah, but it's a
actually
massive
societal thing.
Yeah,
and it's stopping people from meeting their potential. But if you get me started on that, I will not stop. So let's move on. So the challenges are really fundamental in terms of visibility and structure and resources. So let's now lead on a high note in terms of the opportunities. So what's the vision and where would you see yourself going?
Well, the vision was to open our own retail space. But what's stopping us again is the living crisis. The cost of everything is it's crazy. So being in the Reimagine shop, that's allowing us all to be together. And whenever the Reimagine shop closes, because we've worked together, we are considering renting a shared unit rather than on our own, because we just couldn't pay for it.
Okay, this is a mad one now, and this is out of total left field. But the silk kimonos, I mean, I just have a vision that you would really analyze somebody's ink that you adore, who's really high profile, and create a bespoke kimono for them and send it to them.
Yeah, we have. We've approached a few. I wouldn't say high profile, but they've. There was a lady, Bernadette Macias, who would work for Saw on TV over in LA. So we would have sent her over some stuff, and she'd done like a professional photo shoot. So we did target a few influencers just to try and get our stuff out there. But I think we were too far away. We were overseas, so we needed to focus more at home.
And it was maybe too soon as well. I think if we were to do that now, it would be.
Yeah, I think more at home. It was we should have focused locally as opposed to in LA. Yeah. I think we reached too far too soon.
Yeah, but that's okay. And these are the missteps that we can take learnings from. You know, it's not. People say, oh, you know, it's really important to celebrate failure. Failure is horrible, but the learnings that come from it are great.
We spent so much money on suppliers because we were trying to test different suppliers to see what would work for us. And I remember we bought a batch of, I would say, a couple hundred T-shirts or hoodies or whatever it was, and we had sold them. And I remember looking at myself in the mirror and I could see my tattoos through the T-shirts. Yeah. So we had to recall everything. So that was just, at that point, we could have said at that point, it's not working, close the shop. Yeah. But instead we were just like, recall everything, we'll find another supplier, and we started again, you know. Yeah. So.
We used to take in the first boxes of samples when we started Len and Courtney, and we refused to open them without the other one in the room. So myself and Brendan have to be present when we cut the tape. And this is what we do. Please don't be shy. Please don't be shy. Yeah. Please don't be shy.
We're exactly the same.
Yeah. Okay, we'll come back to you. We haven't heard the last from you. Idel, so we've heard from you. You're well established in the industry up here, and a great mentor for so many people. You know, you've spoken a little bit about your response to this morning's event. I want to talk a little bit more about your business. And, you know, I think sometimes it's quite humbling to hear somebody so well established also need to have that external validation of the Loewe award or whatever it is. It doesn't get, it never gets easier, right? The problems just evolve.
Okay. The words well established scare the trousers off me. I don't know if anybody ever is I think I feel the same person I felt entering competitions in my, early 20s with 2 wee babies up in box of jumpers there in with me for the first few weeks at work. But I think that thing of reinventing yourself is so important. It is so, elements of my life are so like being a band that it's all now talking about the gigs and the runs and the whatever, because all of that on validation, that is a nice thesis at the minute, because I've really taken a step back from validation. Actually, Ryan Tuberty brought it up the last night. Who was he talking to? He said when he did all the media and he media declared he was going off social media, and he stuck with that. And there's a lot to be said for it. My Insta account was hacked on the 26th of May. I'll never forget the date. I intercepted it halfway. And you know what? Over the summer, even though I had another account to kick off that was running, I just kind of lost some of the faith. And I realized that what raised my children, and I'm not raising my grandchildren, they just like to see me from 8, and we were blessed with 2 more, 3 days apart in lockdown. But it wasn't social media for sure, because it wasn't around. And Sonia, you'll identify with the days of, like, we used to write these ads up in Derry, we did have the good photos thanks to the Fashion Design Centre in Belfast. That was an incredible place that lasted for about 3 years, run by a lady called Anne Johnson, an ex Marks and Spencer's, what did they used to call the hit people that had the real eye, the buyers for Marks and Spencer's. So Anne Johnson ran that place, but what she really did for young designers, besides give the space and the incubation, was massive publicity. She believed in the stuff, and the photographs, so it was hitting London and hitting wherever. So that visibility, but then we'd be back in Derry, and I've had 4 or 5 shops in Derry. And the longest one lasted was actually the smallest that we took for 1 month as a pop-up. And as a pop-up during the Turner Prize, because it just looked like a dark wee hole in the craft village, and somebody was like, would you crafters go in? And in the second month, I couldn't wait to get out of the place. I had a list from my daughter of friends and people that needed paid for covering the month. And I knew what was coming. Somebody backed out of the second month. And I could hear it. Would I stay? And we did. And a couple of remarkable things happened that July, and we ended up there 7 years. But in the early years, when the first shop, which we've great memories of, and Mary Robinson was in it, and these magical things happened, besides having bomb scares every second week, we used to drop these ads. A designer of international renown, whatever, and the Derry Journal, and the London Derry Sentinel, the Waterside audience kept our doors open. And we put out these messages that I was picking up from, French Vogue or something. This is how you present yourself. And it was simple then, because all we had to deal with was the endless advertising bills from the Derry Journal or wherever. It was as simple. So I think it's really something to look at in terms of the validation, why and where and how much of you're doing through social media. For me, with Loewe, it was the speak I read about craft was not around in 2015-16. Paul Costello, an Irish designer I worked with from second year through for a number of years, he used to say, Del, be very careful with that word craft. I think the word craft is in a very good place now. I had the honour of giving out Future Maker Awards in Dublin during the week, and a guy called Michael Stewart won the overall award. And so retrospectively, his entry was it's astounding, and there was a tier system of judges that I was on the start of, and you had no idea what was happening. But he speaks for a new designer. He speaks so beautifully about craft and how he will not compromise craft. So I believe he's going to end up wherever he wants to be, if it's head of another fashion house, or because of his excellence. For me, it was very about that. I have newspaper clippings of Jonathan Anderson when he was a student, because he was doing Aran knitwear, which was being made in Donegal, and he was doing tartan and a little bit of stuff I'd seen before. And I kind of thought, what, this lad, something going on here. But this has been around a couple of times. And he had a little website going, and it was kind of not working very good with his leather cuffs and his studs. And I mean, he is like the master of his life, the author of his life, the author of design. And to have watched him on that journey and to know that he's from Maherafelt, Northern Ireland, is very inspiring. So that connection for me. Okay, I'll shut up.
And I suppose the one thing about Jonathan, if you read anything about him, he is uncompromising. He will not do anything less than he expects of himself and the organization. And it's a fine line between the paralysis of perfection and the rigor of uncompromising. There's a great line which is that perfection is fear in a fur coat. You know, that idea, I'm a perfectionist, is that a good thing? Well, not if it's stopping you from executing what you need to do, but if you're rigorous and you're uncompromising around excellence, that gives you the power and the empowerment to keep going and keep being as good as you can be. Rosie, you're here representing McGee as the figurehead of McGee, and I suppose you are the head of an organisation, a very successful organisation, and really woven into the fabric and the legacy of Donegal, no doubt about that. And so for that, you're coming to this story with a different perspective. So I'm going to ask you about McGee right now.
Sure.
The challenges and the opportunities and your response to today's event.
I better just clarify that I'm not the head of the dynasty. It is very much a family business, and I work with my dad, and my brother looks after the weaving mill in Donegal town, and my sister on the design and creative side, and I'm just the kind of numbers and got the calculator out. But I think for us, you know, we're coming from that perspective of we have that longevity. You know, we've been around since the 1860s, and I suppose that in itself speaks volumes for the textile heritage and tradition that isn't ours. It's the county of Donegal, and that to have that behind us is such a compelling story to bring to an international audience. But moving to today, I think picking up on what Adele was saying there, this whole idea of reinvention. It's a kind of an interesting concept, because I think you need to be so careful that you remain true to who you are, and that you do have principles, and you do have a core that remains kind of timeless. And for us, that really is about the fabric and about the fit and about the tailoring. But yet we've also had to really make sure that we move with the times. You know, I look at adverts from the 1970s from us, and it kind of makes my skin crawl. It's one of them has a man standing there in a three-piece suit, and it says, "For men who lead the way." So it's, and I'm like, Dad, what were you thinking? And I think you know, that was I you know, of its time. So I have to, you know, give them that get out calls.
Missing because their wives told them to.
So I think for us and for so many people in the room, whether you're sort of a one-man band or a brand or a mill, this is a time of real opportunity. As has been pointed out this morning, people, and by people I mean consumers, are paying more attention to that sense of place and that sense of origin, and we have that in spade loads. So I think for everyone here today, it's like we have a chance to make sure that we now place ourselves on that global map. And for McGee's, that, you know, that means kind of bringing our men's, our women's, our home interiors collections to that global audience, and making sure that we position ourselves and be ambitious. I think there's a tendency to feel a bit kind of cowed and a bit like, oh yeah, we're a clothing brand and we're Irish. And we need to be shouting about that. And I think that obviously came through very, very clearly this morning.
The Japanese are a great example of the love of McGee. At Showcase, they never say McGee. They say, McGee 1866.
Yeah.
And we met my daughter Maggie. We had met some, and they were so polite and saying goodbye and McGee, and they said, McGee is such a popular name. I think they thought my daughter was called for your company in Donegal.
Trendsetters, what can I say?
I want to pick up, not negatively or critically, on one word that you said there, which was consumer. And I am, at the moment, reading a book by the Chief Design Officer of PepsiCo, Mauro Porcini. He's based in New York, and he has been really pivotal in PepsiCo's design strategy, and his whole philosophy is around human-centered design. And he has built basically a matrix for human-centered design. And he has, interestingly, outlawed the word consumer at PepsiCo. Because if you think about it, and we use words all the time, and sometimes it's worth thinking about those words, because we are now in a world where the very concept of consumption is negative, okay? Yeah. So, and even the word customer, I don't think does service to the person who's engaging in our products and services. And so, maybe it's time to bring back the good old-fashioned client.
Yeah, and
and to think about how we reference the people who engage with our brands. And it's not a criticism of you using the word. I just
I'm going back to get the thesaurus now. And
I think this is, so if we're building a playbook for whatever we end up calling this movement, there is almost a Bible of how we do everything. Who and it's not to say that you're creating rules for rules' sake, but it's a philosophy.
Yeah.
That we could maybe create a philosophy for how we engage with our stakeholders is as bad a word as consumers.
I see it as an ecosystem, and we're all part of it.
Should be.
Because of what we're facing. It's not climate change anymore, it's absolute climate crisis. And fashion is 10% of the climate crisis problem. And if we're all not engaging and responsible right through.
Yeah.
So I in my mind, I've been thinking of the ecosystem of us in a way. And there's a massive part to be played by the new minds coming on that are much more digitally aware and able to.
But also even from the point of view of circularizing this movement.
Yes. Yeah.
How do we close the circle and sort of bring back initiate bring back schemes and make this something that has longevity and and even this affects everybody, even for your kimonos, that there are the lifetimes that each kimono has almost becomes a badge of honor for that garment. And it comes back and this has had one lifetime, 2 lifetimes, and that's imbued with the spirit of the previous owners. And I think there's a new way to think about all of this.